The Celtic Twilight. Fairy and Folklore by W.B. Yeats. Village Ghosts. Now we kind of wonder what the ghosts really are. Shayatin min al jinn, right? But it's a sizable one, so, well, smaller than some videos I've done, but in the great cities we see so little of the world, we drift into our minority. In the little towns and villages, there are no minorities. People are not numerous enough. You must see the world there, perforce. Well, that's kind of changed now, hasn't it? Every man is himself a class. Every hour carries its new challenge. When you pass the inn at the end of the village, you leave your favorite whimsy behind you, for you will meet no one who can share it. We listen to eloquent speaking, read books and write them, settle all the affairs of the universe. The dumb village multitudes pass on unchanging. The feel of the spade in the hand is no different for all our talk. Good seasons and bad follow each other as of old. The dumb multitudes are no more concerned with us than is the old horse peering through the rusty gate of the village pound. The ancient mapmakers wrote across unexplored regions. Here are lines across the villages of fishermen and turners of the earth. So different are these from us. We can write but one line that is certain. Here are ghosts. Well, sometimes it's less about intelligence and all that other stuff than it is about having the right beliefs and right actions with what you have available. My ghost inhabit the village of in Leinster. History has in no manner been burdened by this ancient village with its crooked lanes, its old abbey churchyard full of long grass, its green background of small fir trees, and its quay, where lie a few tarry fishing luggers. In the annals of entomology, it is well known, for a small bay lies westward a little, where he who watches night after night might see a certain rare moth fluttering along the edge of the tide. Just at the end of evening or the beginning of dawn, 100 years ago, it was carried here from Italy by smugglers in a cargo of silks and laces. If the moth hunter would throw down his net and go hunting for ghost tales, or tales of fairies and such like children of Lilith, he would have no need for far less patience. To approach the village at night, a timid man requires a great strategy. A man was once heard complaining, "By the cross of Jesus, how shall I go? If I pass by the hill of Dunboy, old Captain Burney may look out on me. If I go round by the water and up by the steps, there is the headless one, and another on the quays, and another one under the old churchyard wall. If I go right round the other way, Mrs. Stewart is appearing at Hillside Gate, and the devil himself is in the hospital lane. I never heard which spirit he braved, but feel sure it was not the one in the hospital lane. In cholera times, a shed had been there set up to receive patients. When the need had gone by, it was pulled down, but ever since the ground where it stood has broken out in ghosts and demons and fairies. There is a farmer at H. Yeah, I don't know what the village is because he was keeping it secret for reasons. Paddy by name, a man of great strength, and a teetotaler. His wife and sister-in-law, musing on his great strength, often wonder what he would do if he drank. One night, when passing through the hospital lane, he saw what he supposed at first to be a tame rabbit. After a little, he found that it was a white cat. When he came near, the creature slowly began to swell larger and larger. As it grew, he felt his own strength ebbing away, as though it were sucked out of him. He turned and ran. By the hospital lane goes the Faries path. Every evening they travel from the hill to the sea, from the sea to the hill. At the sea end of their path stands a cottage. One night, Mrs. Arbuthnot, who lived there, left her door open, as she was expecting her son. Her husband was asleep by the fire. A tall man came in and sat beside him. After he had been sitting there for a while, the woman said, "In the name of God, who are you?" He got up and went out, saying, "Never leave the door open at this hour, or evil may come to you." She woke her husband and told him. "One of the good people has been with us," he said. Probably the man braved Mrs. Stewart at Hillside Gate. When she lived, she was the wife of the Protestant clergyman. Her ghost was never known to harm anyone, says the village people. It is only doing a penance upon the earth. Not far from Hillside Gate, where she haunted, appeared for a short time a much more remarkable spirit. Its haunt was the Bogan, a green lane leading from the western end of the village. I quote its history at length, a typical village tragedy. In a cottage at the village end of the Bogan lived a house painter, Jim Montgomery, and his wife. They had several children. He was a little dandy and came of a higher class than his neighbors. His wife was a very big woman. Her husband, who had been expelled from the village choir for drink, gave her a beating one day. Her sister heard of it and came and took down one of the window shutters. Montgomery was neat about everything and had shutters on the outside of every window, and beat him with it. Being big and strong like her sister, he threatened to prosecute her. She answered that she would break every bone in his body if he did. She never spake to her sister again, because she had allowed herself to be beaten by so small a man. Jim Montgomery grew worse and worse. His wife soon began to have not enough to eat. She told no one, for she was very proud. Often, too, she would have no fire on a cold night. If any neighbors came in, she would say that she had let the fire out because she was just going to bed. The people about often heard her husband beating her, but she never told anyone. She got very thin. At last, one Saturday, there was no food in the house for herself and the children. She could bear it no longer and went to the priest and asked him for some money. He gave her 30 shillings. Her husband met her and took the money and beat her. On the following Monday, she got very ill and sent for a Miss Kelly. Miss Kelly, as soon as she saw her, said, "My woman, you are dying," and sent for the priest and the doctor. She died in an hour. After her death, as Montgomery neglected the children, the landlord had them taken to the workhouse. A few nights after they had gone, Miss Kelly was going home through the Bogan when the ghost of Miss Montgomery appeared and followed her. It did not leave her until she reached her own house. She told the priest, "Father, a noted antiquarian, and could not get him to believe her. A few nights afterwards, Miss Kelly again met the spirit in the same place. She was in too great terror to go the whole way, but stopped at a neighbor's cottage midway and asked them to let her in. They answered they were going to bed. She cried out, "In the name of God, let me in, or I will break open the door." They opened, and so she escaped from the ghost. Next day she told the priest again. This time he believed, and said it would follow her until she spoke to it. And there are spirits that witness things and act like they're the departed. She met the spirit a third time in the Bogan. She asked what kept it from the rest. The spirit said that its children must be taken from the workhouse, for none of its relations were ever there before, and that their masses were to be said for the repose of its soul. "If my husband does not believe you," she said, "show him that," and touched Miss Kelly's wrist with 3 fingers. The places where they touched swelled up and blackened. Then she vanished. For a time, Montgomery would not believe that his wife had appeared. She would not show herself to Miss Kelly. He said, she with respectable people to appear to. He was convinced by the 3 marks, and the children were taken from the workhouse. The priest said the masses, and the shade must have been at rest, for it has not since appeared. Some time afterwards, Jim Montgomery died in the workhouse, having come to a great poverty through drink. And a reduction of activity around where the temporal parietal lobe is can create flashbacks and even interactive memories with the dead. I know some who believe they have seen the headless ghost upon the quay, and one who, when he passes the old cemetery wall at night, sees a woman with white borders to her cap creep out and follow him. That apparition only leaves him at his own door. The villagers imagine that she follows him to avenge some wrong. "I will haunt you when I die," is a favorite threat. His wife was once half seared to death by what she considers a demon in the shape of a dog. And as to the cap, I wonder why she had white borders to her cap. The old Mayo woman who has told many tales has told me that her brother-in-law saw a woman with white borders to her cap going round the stacks in a field, and soon after he got a hurt and he died in 6 months. These are a few of the open-air spirits. The more domestic of their tribe gather within doors, plentiful as swallows under southern eaves. One night a Miss Nolan was watching by her dying child in Fleddy's Lane. Suddenly there was a sound of a knocking heard at the door. She did not open, fearing it was some unhuman thing that knocked. The knocking ceased. After a while, the front door and then the back door was burst open and closed again. Her husband went to see what was wrong. He found both doors bolted. The child died. The doors were again open and closed as before. Then Miss Nolan remembered that she had forgotten to leave window or door open, as the custom is for the departure of the soul. These strange openings and closings and knockings were warnings and reminders from the spirits who attend the dying. The house ghost is usually a harmless and well-meaning creature. It is put up with as long as possible. It brings good luck to those who live with it. I remember 2 children who slept with their mother and sisters and brothers in one small room. In the room was also a ghost. They sold herrings in the Dublin streets and did not mind the ghost much, because they knew they would always sell their fish easily while they slept in the haunted room. And let's remember that the spirits it's, not necessarily that they're all enemies, but if you try to make them your enemies, then, but usually they're like chill. Humans are going to occupy some of the same spaces as them. I have some acquaintance among the ghost seers of western villages. The Connaught tales are very different from those of Leinster. These spirits have a gloomy, matter-of-fact way with them. They come to announce a death, to fulfill some obligation, to revenge a wrong, to pay their debts, even as did a fisherman's daughter the other day, and then hasten to their rest. All things they do decently and in order. It is demons, and not ghosts, that transform themselves into white cats or black dogs. The people who tell the tales are poor, serious-minded fishing people who find in the doings of the ghosts the fascination of fear. In the Western tales is a whimsical grace, a curious extravagance. The people who recount them live in the most wild and beautiful scenery, under a sky ever loaded and fantastic with flying clouds. They are farmers and laborers, who do a little fishing now and then. They do not fear the spirits too much to feel an artistic and humorous pleasure in their doings. The ghosts themselves share in their quaint hilarity in one western town, on whose deserted wharf the grass grows. These spirits have so much vigor that, when a misbeliever ventured to sleep in a haunted house, I have been told, they flung him through the window, and his bed after him. In the surrounding villages, the creatures use the most strange disguises. A dead old gentleman robs the cabbages of his own garden in the shape of a large rabbit. A wicked sea captain stayed for years inside the plaster of a cottage wall in the shape of a snipe, making the most horrible noises. He was only dislodged when the wall was broken down. Then out of the solid plaster the snipe rushed away whistling. So here are people who don't know how to deal with their spiritual encounters. And